Good morning, everybody, fellow Democrats, members of the media. My name is Makgaleng. I'm the chairperson of caucus in Tshwane. We are here to present the state of the city when the shambles, particularly in the finances. We will be led by my colleague, Jacqui. I'm together also with my caucus leader, Ald Cilliers Brink, who is not a novice to you all. And I will hand over the baton to our spokesperson for finance to dive deep in the finances. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. Good morning. Unfortunately, whenever I take the floor, it's not always the best news in the world, and as is the same today. It is an unfortunate fact that unless changes are made in the city of Tshwane, it will be facing a crippling financial crisis by the end of 2026. It has now become clear that the city of Tshwane does indeed not have a funded budget, that the expenses incurred by the city is much higher than the realistic collection of income, and that this is a result of bad policy and bad government. Tshwane has been in an acute financial crisis since the city has been placed illegally under administration for a prolonged period of time in 2020. And this period had a ruinous financial outcome for the city, where the metro turned from a 200 million rand budget surplus to a more than 4 billion rand deficit. When the DA took the reins in 2021, we started slow but real progress by putting in place funding plans that included planning for smart metering systems, as well as salary freezes in 2021 as well as 2023. Now, if the Tshwane municipality has stayed on course with the plans that the DA and its coalition partners put in place, the budget deficit would have been eradicated by the end of 2026. However, as a result of bad decisions by the ANC-led coalition, the city now faces a deficit of between 4 billion and 6 billion by the end of this financial year in June 2026. This is a result of bad decisions that included an attempt to plug the deficit with a city cleansing levy, the decision to not continue with the rollout of the smart metering systems, and a backroom deal with labour unions in order to pay backdated salary increases to 2021. The result of this is a city cleansing levy that has now been put aside by the courts, under collection that is occurring due to meters not being rolled out, and 2 billion rand backdated pay increases that needs to be paid after the municipality refuses to challenge the outcome of a bargaining council decision in the Labour Court. What makes the city's financial position especially vulnerable is the fact that in June 2026, 1.6 billion rand in bullet loans is becoming payable. Now, a bullet loan is the equivalent of a balloon payment, where the capital amount becomes due at the end of a loan term. If the city defaults on the bullet loan, it faces overall financial crisis, as other loans might be called up immediately. Now, while the city can try and negotiate such a crisis, the outcome of this is far from certain. Tshwane has in the past negotiated a payment arrangement with Eskom, which is now a court obligation. And should the city default on its arrangement with Eskom, the utility is in the position to immediately obtain judgment against the city. Now, the upshot of this financial situation is that decisions can still be made to ensure an outcome to this. But significant changes are needed, because if the city does not charter a way forward, it will have to choose which of three things it will default on: Eskom, bullet loans, or obligations to our employees in salaries and pension payments. Whichever three of these scenarios occur, the consequences to the city of Tshwane will be devastating, and its ability to fund capital project and improve service delivery will be extremely halted. When this happens, there is a possibility that Nasipi Moya and the ANC government will no longer be at the head of this municipality, and it will likely be left to the DA to once again clean up the ANC's messes. Instead of waiting this to happen, we want the public to be fully aware of the extent of this financial crisis. Although we are optimistic that the ship can be turned, it is important for us to clear out any delusions that might exist. Cilliers Brink, our caucus leader and mayoral candidate, will now set out the choices that needs to be made by the City of Tshwane government and what the DA will do if we should take over government in 26 weeks.
Thanks very much, Jacqui. I want to emphasize a point that Jacqui made. The city will need to choose on which of three obligations it defaults. It will either default on Eskom, or the bullet loan that becomes due at the end of this financial year, or it will have to dip into salaries and pension contributions on the current assessment of the city's finances. But we believe there's a way out of this. Prevention is better than trying to manage a crisis, and that I can tell you from experience. There are compelling grounds for the Tshwane Metro to dispute the obligation it has to pay 2 billion rand in salary increases backdated to 2021. It still has until the 14th of December, on my count, in order to lodge a review application with the Labour Court, the deadline being 6 months after a bargaining council decision is given. The DA recommends that the step be taken for the simple reason that the Metro has itself said that it doesn't know where the 2 billion will come from. Not in this financial year and not in the next financial year. Or if we were to apply the legal test in terms of the collective agreement, the city simply cannot afford to pay these backdated increases. In these circumstances, the city has an obligation to the ordinary residents that pay rates, tariffs, and charges, or otherwise depend on services from the municipality, to take this 2 billion rand obligation on review. Refusal to do so won't just prejudice the residents of the city, this generation and the next generation. It might also be a major unseen disbenefit to the city's workforce, a fact which the city's two major trade unions seem to have lost all sight of. Despite the city's offers of a settlement, and I am aware that those settlement offers were made after the Labour Court referred this matter back to the Bargaining Council, they remained absolutely adamant that they want full payment of this obligation backdated to 2021. There are many ANC municipalities in this country that were happy to pay these salary increases without any thought of whether the residents of those municipalities could afford the increases. And now they cannot make payroll. They cannot pay their workers on time, or they dip into pension contributions to fund operational expenditure. If you think that Labour instability over the refusal to pay increases was bad, imagine what's going to happen to the city if Tshwane cannot pay its workers on the 25th of every month, or it admits that we've taken your hard-earned pension money in order to pay Eskom. The DA is not opposed to a settlement with trade unions, but such a settlement has to be affordable. That is the test, not just legally, but in practical terms as well. But given the attitude that union leaders have taken, their absolute refusal to talk about a settlement, in law, you then have to go to court in order to soften up the labour unions for a realistic settlement. The matter must be taken on review to the Labour Court. Now, what are the prospects of such a case, given what we know about South Africa and our system of collective bargaining and about the city of Tshwane? One important answer is that earlier this year, the Tshwane Metro won a Labour court case over salary freezes for 2023. Invoking the affordability clause of the collective agreement on salaries, the court agreed with the city that it could not afford to pay 600 million rand in salary increases that were due in 2023. The court's decision turned on, again, affordability, a factor which the local government bargaining council simply failed to consider in any sufficient detail. The 2023 salary freeze was a decision made of necessity. No mayor wants to tell a workforce that there isn't money to pay increases, as any employer in the same situation. But necessity also prompted both the ANC and ActionSA to support that salary freeze. And I want to emphasize that. Well, ActionSA and the ANC, now in coalition together, have all sorts of stories about workers being paid. In 2023, they supported the budget with the exemption application to the Bargaining Council. The 2023 salary freeze enabled Tshwane to secure a favorable payment arrangement on its Eskom debt, which my colleague Jacqui Ace referred to in some detail. Salaries and bulk electricity purchases being the two major operational expenses of any municipality, and Tshwane being, at that point, in acute financial distress, one of the two had to give. The Labour Court also considered the Bargaining Council, the Labour Court also ordered the Bargaining Council to consider the 2021 salary freeze, which at that point, when the matter was heard in 2022, this Bargaining Council simply refused to hear the matter. They didn't even hear arguments on it. They just rejected it out of hand. It wasn't a surprise to us that on the 3rd of November this year, the same Bargaining Council came to the same conclusion that it had over the 2021 salary freezes. What was surprising was how shocking the quality of the reasoning of that decision was. In fact, it is fundamentally flawed. The Bargaining Council Commissioner conceded in his award of these 2021 backdated increases that the financial implications of these salary increases would be, and I have to quote him on this, very huge for the city. And so he granted the city 6 months in order to pay these backdated increases. He made a few references to Tshwane's improved financial situation back in 2022, but at no point did this commissioner even quantify in his award how much this would cost the municipality. It means he didn't assess that number. Nor did he assess the city's ability to pay these backdated increases in light of its other obligations, including to Eskom. It turns out that this, quote, very huge obligation, as the commissioner framed it, is worth 2 billion rand once off and another 400 million rand on top of annual salary bill of the municipality. We therefore call on Mayor Nasipi Moya to reconsider the statement made by the municipality that the city would not take this on review. At the time the statement was made, Eugene Modise, the deputy mayor and finance MMC, was the acting mayor, while the mayor was somewhere in, I think, Brazil. It's clear the way that the municipality handled this, first issuing a statement from the city manager saying they are considering the award, and then a day later, Modise issuing a statement saying, no, the salary increases will be paid, that zero thought actually went into what this is going to cost the city and where the money will come from. In conclusion, we also suggest that in light of the glaring budget deficit in Tshwane, the city prepares a new budget funding plan. In other words, a set of measures which the council can consider in order to avoid a cash flow crisis. Now, those measures might be income-based, it might be expenses-based, but the point is, if you look at the city cleansing levy judgment handed down in favor of AfriForum, the likelihood that the city will lose in the Supreme Court of Appeal on that as well. The 300 million that will strike off of the city's calculations. It is necessary to admit that Tshwane's budget is not credible and that a set of urgent measures is required to avoid this cash flow crisis, which we clearly see coming in the next year. These are positive, proactive, constructive suggestions, which, if they are taken up by the city in the spirit of good governance and the interests of the residents and the workforce, can lead to better outcomes. And we hope that these suggestions would be accepted in that spirit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Celia. And colleagues, anyone with a question, we are going to go for the first round. You introduce yourself and the media house that you come from, then you pose your question. Anyone with the question? Yes, ma'am.
You say the ANC and the ANC and ActionSA supported the budget. Which budget are we talking about?
That's 2023, 2024, including the explicit recommendation that the city manager be authorized to apply to the bargaining council for a salary freeze. That was supported by ActionSA, but not the ANC. So ActionSA supported both salary freezes for avoidance of any doubt. Jacqui, is that correct?
Yeah.
If they hadn't supported it, Antoinette, in 2021, the budget wouldn't have passed.
Beaumont indicated that the salary freeze, the whole dispute around the salary increases, was a major factor in the breakup or breakaway of ActionSA from the multi-party coalition. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct, Antoinette. When ActionSA was with the DA coalition, they were happy to support salary freezes, and they comprehended the financial implications of not pursuing those difficult decisions. If that had been a dispute that couldn't be dealt with, then you wouldn't have had that in the budget. Without ActionSA's votes, the DA and the other parties in the coalition simply didn't have the numbers to push for exemptions. Afterwards, when the strike broke out, then suddenly ActionSA tried to position itself with the trade unions, and Michael Beaumont was running around trying to have backroom conversations with union leaders. And quite frankly, I told him where to get off. And we broke the strike, and it was only, you can count the months. I mean, the strike was July, August, September 2023. Mashaba only made a deal with the ANC in September 2024. So for you to say that that was a proximate cause of the breakup is complete rubbish. And I think in accordance with what we can expect from Michael Beaumont.
Thank you. Another question from the floor. Any question from online?
There is one question that I've got here. So counting up the amounts that you've listed, Cilliers, where does that end up? Like what deficit, what's the big number we can put on that?
Yeah, so it all depends on revenue collection, but there are two very bad scenarios for the city. Either a 4 billion rand budget deficit at the end of June 2026, that's a good scenario, or a 6 billion rand budget deficit. And that is, if you count together, and Jacqui Ace is very willing to share our calculations with the journalists asking the question. That is if you add 2 billion rand in unbudgeted salary payments, if you include the money which the city cleansing levy, having been set aside by a court of law, leaves in the fiscus, as well as if current under collection of revenue is projected for the rest of the year. And remember, attitudes towards payments are very often reflected by whether people actually trust the municipality. There is a massive billing disputes crisis currently in the city, where the city cleansing levy was applied even before the city had tried to appeal the case, and where residents simply don't get answers to their objections. They don't get answers to their objections on property valuations. So there's a breach of trust that's widening. And if you want to collect revenue, you better show residents that you're on their side. And unfortunately, what we have now is the exact opposite.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your time, and we can engage after here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.